Welcome to another episode of Lightning Dogs.
How nice.
I'm
That
Cap.
was a long one. Hey, I'm Doug.
And I'm Tony the Prospector. 'Cause apparently we're yodeling up in the mountains at this point.
Oh, hey, man.
No? What?
A dog.
I was just getting...
That was a proper dog howl, man. I don't know. Maybe it was a little warbly. Maybe it was a little long. But sometimes you gotta get it out.
Got a warble?
Yeah. Today in this episode of Lightning Dogs, we're gonna be doing something a little bit different. This one has a visual component that you can watch along with. We hope. We're going to be using Tony's Picarto stream. That's picarto.tv, and we'll link to where you can view this archived. And Tony's going to be sketching while we're having a Lightning Dogs meeting, dialogue, usual world building, character building, debates, etc. In this episode, the focus is on one of our secondary but still large-scale adversaries, Queen Lich. All right, so the stream has started, and you can watch this, you can listen to this, whatever's most convenient for you. There's going to be some stuff that won't translate, and we'll do our best to make sure the audio component is not injured by the visual component. So Queen Lich. I guess a refresher course might be needed. She's a human who is no longer human.
She was human, and she turned into a lich. She lichified herself using technology instead of magic.
She is literally no longer a human.
Yes. And she was a geneticist. We've had a couple different origins batted back and forth, but generally the consensus is she was a geneticist. She became her own biggest experiment, and at a certain point is sort of interested in being able to recreate humanity and own her own humanity again, which unfortunately she cannot realize is actually impossible, even if she got it genetically correct. She herself is something far less than human. She's too broken. She's too crazy.
That all sounds like Queen Lich, all right.
Now, another aspect of her is that we sort of added to her and also her minions a kind of action figure quality of what is likely interlocking body parts using magnets, which is a really cool action figure technique that I've never seen used in mainstream action figures, but is used a lot in the indie DIY action figure statuette kind of scene that's going on these days.
Yeah, and the idea came from, if she's trying to experiment and create the perfect body, and it was just something that as I was kicking around designs, I came up with something where, what if she was able to socket in and out different parts? So she just have sockets all around her head, and I think was that a design we were all kind of happy with, that kind of idea?
I wasn't in love with the head sockets, but the swappable heads and stuff, I feel like, we want to make sure that Queen Lich has something of a consistent identity. I liked how are you guys familiar? Tony, I know you are, but Doug, are you familiar with the Men in Black animated series?
Yeah.
You remember Alpha?
You're gonna have to refresh me on who Alpha was.
Alpha was an early director of the MIB who started grafting alien parts onto himself, and every time you saw him in the series, every single time, and he was a major adversary, he'd always have something else going on as humanity was deteriorating over the course of the series.
I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but that sounds great. It sounds like what we're going for.
Yeah. Now, Queen Lich, she's already had a long time to do this. I just want I want to make sure that she looks. There's some visual aspect that you always know it's her. Like Alpha, his head was always Alpha's head, and maybe that's a little silly, but hey, we are a cartoon after all. Now, I like what you're doing right now, Tony. I like the deep eye wells, and the actual sockets in the top of her head, like a Barbie doll. I don't know if that's a thing, but certainly
the way
looking
I picture
right
it,
now.
let's say she wanted to add some horns or some sort of antenna, something like that. And if not, then she would just socket hair on top of it, but the face would always stay the same.
Oh, something we should also mention is that there was a back and forth, and I don't recall that we ever really definitively said one way or the other. But there was a back and forth about, is Queen Lich's scientific mutation of herself something that is largely genetic, or is it largely technologic? There was a talk of nanomachines at one point, which I definitely wanted to gravitate away from, because once you enter a kind of a universe where an actual lightning dog, what are the chances?
Yeah, that is Malcolm, our prototypical asshole captain, trying to announce himself and make him part of the Lightning Dogs universe. I have told him that if he really wanted to be a character, he would have to apply like everybody else, and we'd get him a form. But what are you going to do?
But yeah, nanomachines, the Grey Goose scenario, everything that nanomachines in their fullest extent are capable of, it's too big, it's too much, and maybe someday within our lifespans we'll see evidence of like nanomachines can literally change everything. They can reconfigure everything on a molecular level. There's no limits whatsoever. But that's just not interesting for story. That's too impossible. The powers are too great. The only reason they were able to get away with it. What's up?
Oh, I lost you for a second there.
Oh, okay. The only reason nanomachines they had a character called Nano in the 2003 Ninja Turtles series. And the only way they were able to get away with doing that, because it was a total like Grey Goose scenario thing, was that it had the collective consciousness of a child and was gravitating towards creating avatars for itself. There's no way. I don't know. You can't really. Basically, if there's a woman running it, there's a woman commanding nanomachines. She's too powerful.
The only reason I suggested nanomachines to begin with was that that's something that's so powerful it seemed like magic at first, which would fit in with the Lich-like motif we got. But the face that Tony's got right now, I dare say, is the oldest face that we've seen yet. I mean, it's just got some lines, but I'm picking up hints of Maleficent, as well as Norma Desmond from Sunset Boulevard, which, now that I think of it, Norma Desmond from Sunset Boulevard is an amazing way to take this character.
This is right off the bat the strongest representation of Queen Lich I've ever seen you do, Tony. Where's this coming from right now?
I'm just a badass, Cap.
Oh.
I have no idea. This is me. This is what I've been picturing her in my head as.
Well, this is very different from the previous ones. I like that she looks older. I think that there's like her being an attractive older woman and having that vibe, and having like, I guess, a certain, you can tell that maybe like holding on to her youth was something that she was trying to do with some of her experiments, and it only goes so far, and she has to then take extreme measures to try to keep fresh, basically. And there's definitely a lot of Queen Mombi from Return to Oz in this, with the Hall of Heads and all that. Like that's a definite aspect.
Have both of you guys seen Sunset Boulevard?
No.
I have not, no.
Okay, we may have to watch that one, because everything you're saying about her holding on to youth and interchanging these parts, granted in Sunset Boulevard she doesn't literally change parts, but it's worth seeing. I think that might be one we have to put on our list of films, as especially when we get into specifics about certain villains, like certain movies represent certain villains. Then I would, from where we're going right now, I would definitely recommend Sunset Boulevard for Queen Lich.
And the sketch that is currently on screen is just the very rough torso that I'm putting together right now. And this is kind of the nude version of her torso. She would wear clothes according to what she's dressed as things go along, because modesty and things. But this is kind of what I figured was, and this is something that you and I had discussed, Cap, at one point, where she would have this kind of hideous thing going on underneath, so that we could still keep it a kid's show, appeal to the chidlins, and not just also torture our animators with hideous, grotesque things that they would need to draw in every frame. This would be that heart cavity.
I feel like Queen Lich, she needs to be a combination of beauty and horror as often as possible. A lot of Inhumanoids qualities, like from that show. A little bit of Mutagen Man from Ninja Turtles, particularly the action figure, not the other representations really. Though some of them has been kind of faithful to the action figure. That's the fellow that's a a hollow cavity with a meaty arms and legs attached, and he's got like a central nervous system kind of dangling in it, and you would put either colored water or the mutagen they sold in cans into the cavity. He also came with a collection of weird little things. I don't think I have any of them anymore, but things like a fish skeleton and other weird garbage stuff you could kind of shove into the hole and have it float around in there. But that's not important for her.
Go ahead and do the
One thing I'm picking up now that I'm remembering, especially with this hole in her chest, if we make this kind of like a red glowing orb thing, that so we don't have to necessarily see the heart, but yet we're strongly inferring it, kind of like E.T. Or, now I think of it, I'm going to link to it real quick. Do you guys remember the original bride that was in the attic of the Haunted Mansion?
Yeah.
No.
The original, because like now they have awesome technology where they make her talk and she's just like, till death do us part, and then it's a full facial animation projection, and then like her hands get filled with like a wood axe and stuff like that. But what it used to be was just this dark faced like mannequin. I mean, well, it wasn't a mannequin, it was supposed to be a ghost, but like just a dark faced person where you don't get a lot of detail, and it's just like this glowing wedding gown, and it was just a glowing heart beating, and it was just the sound of a heart beating in the attic, and it was very unsettling and very creepy because it wasn't talking to you. It had like glowing eyes and a glowing heart, and like that's it. It was almost wraith-like. Now, I'm not suggesting we go wraith-like for Queen Lich, but definitely like a glowing red heart thing definitely conjures up some creepy memories, especially as a kid, because it's not really graphic or horrific, but yet it's I don't know. Anyway, I'm posting a link here in the chat so you guys can see.
I'm curious, the trope of a visible heart thing is used a lot, and I don't know that. I feel like maybe we can come up with something else.
It's also not something.
Go ahead. I was saying that I'm not really suggesting that the heart itself is visible so much as there's a pulsing red thing that symbolizes that there is a part of her inside that's still human, like something that's inside that is still organic.
And it is a well-used trope. It's well-tread territory, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we shouldn't. I mean, I think it fits her character. I think it fits everything we have described for her, and I don't think we should necessarily search for something else just for the sake of being different. It works for it. The idea that there is this part of her that is vulnerable, yet still it's so integral to her core that that's the one part of her she won't remove or can't remove.
I think that's a great idea, especially if we hint at a possible maybe not, will they, won't they, frenemy romance infatuation with Glampire. Because if she has a relationship with technology, she could definitely be a linchpin in trying to control these robots that Glampire has no control over.
Maybe like a linchpin.
If he can get Queen Lich on his side, he won't have to worry about these vampires. He won't have to worry about these robots ever again. I mean, so his motives aren't even of the heart. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It could be politically motivated, but for her, I don't know. I just think there's many potential paths to take with her, and I'm just trying to narrow down what we think are some of the more strongest options.
Sure. And visually, I was not saying that the trope itself was bad, but that the aspect of it being like a glowing heart thing, like in what in a video game you might perceive as an easy weakness, like the heart on Tyrant in Resident Evil, for example. It's the exposed heart has been done. We could do it with something else. Like, for example, if we saw a glowing nervous system on her, like if that was the tell that it was her, like when things get flared up, all of a sudden all of her, like all these veins are glowing green, whether they're actual biological veins, connected to more linear circuit-like pathways and a cybernetic implant and all that, like that it would be a consistent thing if she has this, like some kind of device that has its own unique color scheme in her abdomen that expresses something maybe a little bit more unsettling than a heart, even, because that's an idea people have gotten comfortable with. So something else.
Well, even once again, even when I'm talking about her heart glowing, I'm picturing more of just like, I don't want to say Tony Stark suit of iron, but just like a light, like basically an LED of just that is pulsing constantly, and you could have that tie into expanding out into a nervous system when it's time for her to get strong or time for her to attach something. She attaches an arm here, and then the light goes down little veiny circuit board veins sort of thing. But the idea just being that a central red glowing centerpiece, and that could even be like how Batman wears that as a distraction, that might not even be her most vulnerable spot, like a big red glowing thing in the center that's super protected and durable. It's like, throw anything you want at it, it's not going to do anything, which also kind of has a Mr. Freeze vibe to it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Tony's just drawn he's working on a profile of Queen Lich, and in this case, she's got some like really intense elf ear going on.
Like I said, she's all about augmenting herself. So the idea was that anything that she could steal the senses from another creature, she leaves that part with the availability to be socketed. And then demonstrating as well the kind of socket-on hairpiece. And this is never going to make it into the show, but I just thought with, hairpiece, maybe her layered being Trump Tower. Hey, it made me laugh for 30 seconds. That's all I fucking needed.
And I think it would be, I guess she probably shouldn't have a conventional human skin tone anymore. Like something.
Nah, I picture her like cold, gray, pallid.
Like Mr. Freeze.
Yeah,
there's a lot of Mr. Freeze influence here.
Either gray, blue, or outright like white, with tinges of like tan and blue might be the best route. There's a let me pull up a character. Let me and remind myself before I make any claims to see if it's actually a good
point
reference.
Of comparison.
Yeah.
Like, do you want her pale, like the Queen from Snow White kind of thing, or
no?
Or do we want her
like a corpse? I'm picturing like a corpse.
I was just about to say that, like, because I always picture her more gray, like a corpse that's still barely alive. I mean, without the gross stuff. Like, her skin tone is definitely gray, but
Okay, how many have you guys ever heard of the animated film Rock and Rule?
Never.
Cannot say as I have. No.
It's been a long enough time that I've forgotten the hows and whys and who exactly is responsible for it. But it's definitely a super cool, cyberpunkish, so good it's bad animation. Like, it's very, very neat. And in it, Lou Reed plays a character called Mock. And let me forward on to you the face of that character, because this actually could be a great little piece of influence for Queen Lich. And also something to put on the movie list. I don't have a copy of it. I need to get one. Last I saw it was, I forget if it was like out of print or recently back in print. It's a cult classic.
Yeah, he looks sufficiently creepy.
Where should I be looking at? Well, whoa. Got a little bit of a Jafar thing going on there.
That's like Jafar mixed with Ursula.
Poor unfortunate street rats.
I should say that he does the singing voice of Mach. Or at least, or maybe Okay, I'm looking at the article now. It looks like it was both Lou Reed and Iggy Pop doing his singing voice. So yeah. Anyway, interesting film that I need to watch again because I am shocked by how much I'm unable to remember right now.
That is bizarre for you, Cap.
Yeah. I'm the whole. I use this is exactly the kind of stuff that I inexplicably do remember. So I'm very, very surprised that I'm drawing a blank. But hey,
someone's replaced Cap.
Well, here's the Wikipedia summary. The story takes place in a post-apocalyptic United States populated by mutant humanoids. And there's like a kind of rock and roll music conflict. So yeah, it's appropriate. And there's a 2-disc DVD edition from 2005 that I will be acquiring, I guess. So one thing that we should do is the sockets. They're important, but also finding a look for them that's both mechanical and has,
organic.
Yeah, and has an organic nature to it. Something that where, like, for example, those holes in there. I want to believe that they're not just like robotic socket holes, but that there would be like nerve endings and bones and stuff that would extend into those. And when it comes to Queen Lich's motivations in the world at large, I feel like the best way for her to function in the wasteland is as much an independent force as possible. She's a resource that Glampire will tap. They have something going on. It's weird. The more we develop it, the more I feel like any potential romance or affection between them would be Glampire kind of manipulating a sick woman.
Yeah, I always kind of felt the same way about that.
It's not as though we've got something like that set up for Glampire anyway, to be a manipulator or anything like that.
You know, he is the bad guy, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
And the way that we had originally pitched her was kind of this idea that she was at one time involved with him, not necessarily still. And that's one of the like she was chasing after trying to be like him, and then it was her regressing, trying to regain her humanity after.
No, that's a very good point. Because she would clearly be from like the last generation of humans prior to catastrophe.
Yeah, she saw the apocalypse happen.
And if she was an associate of him or a close associate or someone who accidentally got too close, who could know about his alien physiology, who could be trying to replicate it, or could even be working on a project for him and went off her own deep end because of that, it's just one more horrible atrocity that Glampire has somewhat inadvertently committed.
Somewhat inadvertently. Fucking prick. These are people's lives, Glampire.
Well, it would make sense, especially if, like, I mean, because again, there's so much about the Glampire backstory that we haven't ironed out yet. But if she's working for whatever, if she was the head scientist at whatever company he was, running, and she makes the discovery that he's not human, but maybe decides not to tell anyone because she's obviously curious, and
it's like an exciting erotic thing for her.
It's like in that scene, because we have discussed at this point Man Who Fell to Earth. If that sequence where David Bowie reveals himself as an alien wasn't so much him revealing, but her discovering, and instead of her being horrified, she's like, oh. Well,
especially if her whole thing was about trying to push humanity forward, like the next big evolution, like if that was her obsession before anyway, like trying to achieve a physical perfection,
Mm-hmm.
Like she imagined a future where, you know, humans would alter their genes on the fly, and, you know, you could heal rapidly, and, you know, everyone was a superhuman, and, you know, it's like this crazy utopia from her point of view. But of course, you know, Glampire, being from where he's from, is like, it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's not easy being perfect.
And now it's a situation where the genes of the Earth are incredibly fluid. They can transmute into just about anything, but they're almost completely uncontrollable. And that's where her work comes in, is she's trying desperately to control it and bring some order to the genetic chaos that Earth represents now. Which is also why the lightning dogs might be fascinating to her, because they have, to an extent, untainted genes. Like, they have been very much influenced by crystal growth, but it was all from natural crystals, so it was all an even evolution. Whereas,
Yeah, it wasn't anything rapid. It was over time.
Yeah, it was still natural selection, technically.
And now, what I'm working on now, for those of you watching, I'm toying around with the idea of a socket where it's got some kind of metal casing that goes around it that would bind with the flesh, and then inside, we'd have these three almost like pinholes that are surrounded by muscle. And depending on what she's putting in, it would join in with these various things. That way we get a little bit of that biological twinge to it. But it's also got that peg in there, so that as you're looking at it as an action figure, we can have this be a sticker and this be the actual peg.
Gotcha.
Look at me. Thinking.
Do you guys remember the one of the animated short Clone Wars Tartakovsky ones where Obi-Wan had to fight this weird alien who was like could adapt on the fly? Like, it was there was like a speeder bike jousting.
Yeah,
moment.
was the end of the first quote unquote season.
Yeah, and it kind of was sort of like a precursor to General Grievous in a weird way. But I remember he had this like I don't think he even had a name. I don't remember, but it's like he was just this weird biological morphine, a hulk of muscle that could grow and shrink and do all this stuff.
Let's be fair, Doug. It's Star Wars. He's got a name, but I don't remember. They never said it.
Yeah, I just don't remember.
Well,
but,
and he may have been out of continuity long before, the continuity reset.
Let's see here. Obi-Wan versus Clone Wars. We'll see what it comes up with.
Something that could be interesting visually with her is having some kind of gel fluid that would aid in the bonding process, especially for quick and dirty splicing. Like it's kind of like an anti-rejection drug that almost acts as more of a biological spackle. Just kind of glue
By the way,
creatures together.
Dirge was his name.
Ah, okay, cool.
And you know what? I like that idea, Cap. So on the inside, like this part right here, we're going to add these little like nozzles that spurt that in. That type of thing that you only need to see once. And then you know what happens every time, because we'll have like some kind of Foley sound effect thing. Some.
Cool.
Socket.
And now that I'm now that we're talking about this glowing thing, what if it's like a sort of a phosphorescent green or a phosphorescent yellow to make it more chemically inclined, as opposed to like a red beating heart? Like, it can be, a yellow beating heart or a green beating orb or whatever you want to call it, and that could be like a color theme going on. Because especially if we're gotten like a gray skinned deathly kind of thing, green or yellow would seem to fit that pretty well.
Yeah, very much. And it also is a device that could be used plot-wise for power or weakness. If she has enough of it, she can, be extremely, extremely dangerous in a given scenario. If she has too much of it, it could be she could just turn into a big fucking Candida tumor, exploding all over people. If she has too little of it, she's up shit creek if she runs out and she needs to make modifications.
And either way, she's got to jettison a limb. Either way, she's got to jettison a limb because if she's got too much, then the pieces that are of her, because that's what it would be. It would be rejecting the augmented parts. So any kind of non-humanoid limb, which she doesn't have anything that's pure human anymore, would have to be rejected, bringing her back down to this nice defenseless torso side.
And I think it should be probably pretty important that what little success she had from studying Glampire is what is one of the many factors that has kept her alive and then in this very painful immortality.
I'm just realizing now that you gave her a giant lobster claw.
Yeah, he never zoomed out enough that I could see that.
You guys just weren't paying attention when I was fucking drawing it.
I may have been looking for something. Anyway, okay, lobster claw there. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Everybody's looking for something. Sweet dreams are made of these. No? Okay.
Yeah, she could look like Annie Lennox most of the time. That's okay.
We've just come up with your theme. All of a sudden, she shows up. Dun, 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 dun.
Though I don't. She's got some strong legs. I don't know how she's gonna wave that around. Seems like more of a thing you kind of drag on the floor. It also looks pretty phallic. I'm just gonna put that out there. Which isn't a bad thing, but
We'll say here.
maybe if it could be like dribbling some juice there, that would be a good. Yeah, there.
No, it would not. Make it green, please.
Yeah. Okay. So
I shouldn't be allowed in front of. I should not be allowed to do this. It's the dick golem at MegaCon all over again.
I'm gonna pull up some images of Alpha from Men in Black because it's the various phases he went through were pretty fascinating and a good threshold for how weird we could and should get. There's one where he's got like tentacles and heads and shit attached to him, and his neck is elongated, and he's all messed up.
Let's see. There's a little head dude I came up with the other day. Let's add him to the sheet. There he is.
Okay, so let's talk plot stuff. What's the ideal circumstance under which the Lightning Dogs first meet Queen Lich?
Accidental.
And that's what I was feeling as well. Like I feel like Glampire calling her in as he has done with so many other things would sort of cheapen that.
Yeah, I think the way to go would be an accidental thing. They don't even know there's a backstory there. This is another random crazy thing they stumble across on the wasteland, much like that goblin who's hoarding all the weeaboo stuff. they think this. They might even think that she's like low level until she's like, yes, well, just if you can help me move this thing in the back room, and then like a sliding door opens and it's just like a underground freaking fortress. It's like the Fortress of Solitude, but with frozen body parts. Like everywhere. It's like, oh, we stepped into the wrong place. Goodbye. And then they realize they've just stumbled across like a big bad without even knowing it.
Yeah.
I always pictured her kind of body part thing to also be like this, like we've seen, and I'm sure we've all seen enough movies at this point where there's that, and it's just kind of a stupid trope of a woman going into a closet with all these outfits and shoes, and she's got to pick. And I just kind of picture her body parts being like that. Like, who am I today?
I've seen it a few times before, but I do never grow tired of essentially the dry cleaners of body parts. You know, like a automated rack that scrolls a huge like library of weird things.
And the part of Tony that loves plays on words loves the "Who am I today?" Can't go wrong. Give this guy his little tuft of hair.
So what are you drawing right now, Tony? It's some kind of weird head with a stitched up eye hole, and
this is the sidekick.
Yeah, this was the sidekick that we had or that I had posted the other day. Her head of operations.
Right.
And this would be one of the early experiments that was just broken enough. It didn't go mad. It didn't go crazy. It might have started that way. It might not have enough intelligence to actually do it. To do anything. He's the doorman.
And Cap, the thing about the alpha pictures that you posted from Men in Black, there's a lot of thing going on, like as in The Thing, John Carpenter's thing.
Yeah. It was pretty fascinating. Every time you saw him, it was different. And it was a different kind of body horror.
And I know this might not necessarily be. Fuck it. Young Justice Season 2 is up on Netflix at this point, Cap.
That's
You're
cool.
Gonna throw that out there, given the history that Young Justice has with the Lightning Dogs.
Will it still be up by the time anyone hears this? I don't know, but it could be.
It could be, and if so, watch it, because Greg Weisman is hopeful for a third season if enough people show that they want it.
So I guess a new influence here. I'm picking up a vibe of The Thing, Mr. Freeze, and Brainiac.
Where are you getting Brainiac? You don't mind if you're just in general.
Brainiac in general, in terms of augmenting himself and never being able to fully capture him. He's always sort of squeaking away, and every time you see him, he's a little bit different.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
I will say that I like the idea of the head of operations. I think it's a good pun, which I know you won't hear me say too often. I think there might be more we can do with them. Like we can make it a more interesting character than weird squonky snarf of body parts. But I do not visually. Go ahead.
What if he was actually kind of horrific, like that floating head thing from Big Trouble in Little China?
If we're doing a kind of mindless thing, that would be a good way to go. Something that is like an actual otherworldly horror, and maybe that used to be
like it's something that she completely created and is just so horrific. Oh, don't just snarf. Oh. Something that's completely, because right now he looks like something out of DBZ. But if it's something
it's
that's
the eyes
like,
that make it particularly DBZ.
But if it's something that's like complete otherworld horror where you don't even really know, like when the Lightning Dogs see it, if this is the first thing they see that's sort of like floating around on robot spider legs, it's like, what the hell? Like, I mean, completely. And then she's like, don't mind him. That's just my pet. He's my head of operations. And they're like, is she trying to be funny? Like, like that kind of, like when they're scared, don't really know what to make of her just yet.
I mean, if we have a character called Head of Operations, maybe she actually does have something that's holding on to a certain amount of sentience. Maybe there's there's just the one thing that is actually, a minion. Because otherwise, otherwise the pun doesn't work, right? Like if it's just a monster,
yeah, it's got to be a head.
Well, even if it's a floating, like if it looks like a beholder from D&D, it's still a head. But even still, it's the operations part that I'm concerned with, because it's. I believe that she could have something that's sentient. I believe she could have something where that pun is truthful in every sense, that it is just a head, more or less, and it does actually assist her doing shit.
Well, I was kind of thinking something like with no personality, like the brain is the ultimate computer. So she took whatever personality this thing had and is just using it as like a pure computer thing, you know, something that would really give off the creepy vibe. Whereas like if it has a personality, you're like, well, she's not. I guess she's. Is it weird to say that it doesn't sound as evil? You know, that if she lets it have a personality and it kind of cracks a joke or something, that kind of makes her more
Yes,
relatable.
you're right. It isn't as evil. And
I don't think she needs to be blatantly evil either, though, because I mean, like we had originally discussed for it, she's kind of on a path of misguided redemption.
Yeah, well, evil wasn't, I guess, is not the right word. I'm thinking more of just like completely alien to them, like otherworldly, especially in this world where they're trying to figure out who were the masters, what were they really like. They meet Glampire first. He looks kind of like a master, but he's totally not. But then, you know, later down the line, they meet Queen Lich and they're like, oh, you actually were there at the time of the masters, but she is not one of them, you know? So like everywhere they're going, they're not getting the real deal. And that's ultimately the sad thing about it, is that they're never going to get to meet a master. And when they do, it's a bad master, you know?
also, Tony, if those are tank treads, you can stop right now. I don't want that. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but it's too silly.
Don't tread
No.
on me. He's gonna wear it as a bumper sticker.
What you were saying, Doug, about using a brain as a computer? I think it was you. It was Doug. It's an interesting thought of what if there was a creature that kind of had, let's say, like a mentally incompetent personification. It was alive, but for some, it projects stupid, but the processing power of it is something that's used. Does that make sense? I'm not even sure if that's possible on a genetic level. To have,
I guess
no, what it could be, and this might be entertaining. We could use that stupid pseudoscience that human beings only use 10% of their brain, and reduced the computing power of this creature down to 10%. What that would actually be, what that would actually look like, and retask the other 90% to whatever else.
To running her compound, I guess, the automation of it.
Be dumb as shit, but it'd be entertaining too.
And I guess it is a little cruel to narrow. It's like, well, I was thinking, like, is it more cruel to, you know, have it have a personality, or is it more cruel to take it away? It might be more cruel to only give it 10% of its original personality, you know, just so that it's aware enough.
So it's sitting there going like, me like cookie, when it used to be a baker.
Wasn't quite going to go that far as having it say me like, or speaking in broken English so much as it can just give odd looks and speak in a monotone voice.
I've just included.
Cav, why did you post that? That is awful, Cav.
I've just included a picture of the computers from Your Pretty Faces Going to Hell. These hypothetically were people, but they were turned into PC towers made out of flesh and junk, and it's awful.
It looks terrible and horrifying.
It's an amazing show. And these are cool, weird little puppets. Yeah, imagine if you will, she had a brilliant cohort in whatever industry she was in, and let's say they thought she'd gone too far. She had to defend herself. She cracked their skull with a wrench, and then is apologizing while harvesting. They're like, you have a beautiful brain. I can't let it go to waste. That would be too awful. And then hundreds of years later, it's basically a glorified processor that she carries around with her to do the computing for her experiments.
Yeah, like an early peopleoid head.
I am entirely down with that idea. And it's literally her clinging to the last vestiges of her humanity while simultaneously being the moment that broke her.
Now, we've said that there's like almost nothing left of her as human, but is there, I think we should decide, is there any part of her that is human. For example, does she still have 100% of her human heart? Or does she still have 100% of her human brain, but it has the additional stuff added into it to like make her think faster? Or does she not have all of her brain or all of her heart or whatever?
I would say all of her heart, most of her brain. Just where I'm leaning.
I'm gonna say
Because
what were you saying? Finish your thought.
no, I was just gonna say it's that part where you replace everything but that one last bit. And the brain can kind of lead it to her being unhinged.
I think it is important that, you know, she's likely augmented her brain in hopes that it would work better, but she'd still have, you know, a fair portion of it that's untouched directly.
See, because I was thinking if she has 100% of her human brain, but she's clearly added more to it, like, you know, like a jump drive where you could plug something in and, you know, like add more information to your brain, Matrix, sort of Matrix style. Whereas if she has 100% of her original human brain and 100% of her original human heart, there's something to be said there where it's like these are the only two pieces of her that are human, and she's constantly going back and forth. Now I'm throwing another Batman villain, more Two-Face, you know, like two minds of the same problem. You know, like there's always going to be one side that says this, one side that says this, but the cold calculating brain is going to say, no, we're going to do that. And, you know, the heart is getting overruled constantly because it's the part that's not augmented.
It might be a great storyline if she had, let's say, backups of her brain, and at one point an earlier backup overrides the rest of it, like after she's an established character. And
it's like if she backed up her memories on like a hard drive, and then she re-uploaded them, and then she's horrified at what she's become, and is like, how could I ever let myself go like this? Like, how could I ever do this to myself? And of course, the current Queen Lich is trying to fight it back, and is like, we must.
We'd have to contrive a situation whereby she would need to have done that to get maybe some information that she lost or something. I don't know. We'll come up with that.
She's a scientist. You always make a backup. You always make backups of your research.
Well, we're not arguing that, but I mean, like, but there's a reason to activate the backup, that it needs to be a direct plug-in of the backup, and that it's supposed to, she's supposed to just, like, you know, scan that, get what she needs, and move on. But something goes wrong, and so there's an inevitability that personality will be consumed by the right and proper Queen Lich. But in the meantime, she and the Lightning Dogs have to struggle with the fact that there's someone who's actively, like, different from who they know and is horrified with what she's done and could be an ally. Like, you know, some of them may actually have hope that they could save her, but that's really misplaced, because it's ultimately, the whole point of it would be an exercise in the futility of it.
A little bit of flight of the Navigator in there.
And Gladys from Portal.
True. What are you drawing now, Tony? You got some people faces. What's going on here?
I just drawn the three of us.
Oh. Look, Doug looks so hunky, like, I mean, more than normal. I'm
usually a little unkempt and have a beard going.
Like a sexy greaser biker man. What was I gonna say? Something back there before that Queen Lich plot cropped up. Oh,
uploading
right,
human brain,
her heart,
human memories,
or the head and the heart, right? Okay, so she doesn't. What use would she have for actually having a human heart controlling her circulatory system? None. But hold your damn horses. Okay. But she does still have it. It's just this weird little sentimental thing of, like, maybe it's never even directly referenced, or not for a long time, but there's always a human heart in a tank, like, nearby, that she's just held on to as a weird sentimental thing. She cut it out. She kept it there. She never needs it, because that would be, I mean, if you got gorilla arms, you need a better circulatory system. That's just a fucking fact.
That is definitely true.
So it's just there. Really, the only practical thing for her to hold on to is her brain. Everything else is completely, rife for changing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would make sense that it's kind of. I'm kind of digging the idea that she still has her heart, but it is alive in a jar somewhere, you know, and that by her removing it and keeping it separate, it is like a reminder, but yet it's not something that she feels like she needs. And then, of course, end of the show after 10 successful seasons of Lightning Dogs, and we're getting to the final home stretch story finale. She is like maybe damaged beyond repair, and the only hope she has is to put her old heart back in, but that's when she goes good.
6 seasons and a movie.
I mean, even if it's no matter when we did that storyline where she used an older version of herself, that could maybe even be the first time that we reference like there it is, like she's looking at her own heart in a window and she's like, this is like this is me, this is the last bit of me, this is what is what is this. Granted, that person is likely still a murderer, still not 100% awesome, but
so far gone from what she was when she was human.
That's when we play Who I Am Inside from Mulan.
I think it's interesting that if she has lived so long as a human, or rather she was human, and now she has lived so long, she's keeping the heart, but she, like, her struggle at the end is that she doesn't even like remember her human name. It's like, why is she even holding on to it? And she can't even answer why, you know?
Well, yeah, I kind of see it. The reason she kept the heart in the first place was Queen Lich's original idea wasn't to abandon humanity, but to create the perfect human.
Exactly.
And she then has to define what makes a human human. And perhaps it is a sentimental attachment.
Heart.
Yup. Home is where the heart is. Ha! Have a plaque behind.
Don't you ever?
Absolutely.
Don't you ever ever say that for putting it into an episode?
No, that is happening. I don't care. I will fight you guys. It is going to happen.
I will say
her heart is in a jar. Her heart is in a jar. Beneath the jar is a plaque that says "Home is where the heart is."
With not even a plaque, I actually would be a fan of her saying these little jokes, but yet they're not really funny. They're just scary. And like that's she's cracking these jokes in a way to almost think that she's keeping her humanity, where it's like they're like, is that a heart in a jar? And then she's like, well, home is where the heart is, as they say. You know, it's just like, ugh, like that's not. I'm just scared now.
For the head,
I won't stop while my heart's still beating.
Over there, down the hall. For the head of operations, think of MODOK. The machine designed only for killing, or whatever, however the fuck that sorts out those letters. Whatever. I'm not gonna worry about it. Anyway, machine designed for killing. MODOK. He's a fat little head. His arms and legs, they don't do much. So imagine what happens when you have a portable brain designed only for computations, and it has minor biologic functions. It's kind of like a little compartmentalized animal thing. It gets hooked up to other tubes, and it's awful. Because I kind of want the head of operations to be more than the de facto like sidekick figurine that comes packaged with the primary character. But maybe not, well, Also, we don't really have to worry about defining exactly what that is right now.
I kind of pictured him as being this thing that could socket into creature bodies.
Uh-huh.
Where she would send him out less as just, she's not just the head. He's not just a head. He's not just something that is kept around. He's the muscle. He's not the sidekick, but the sidekick and second in command.
With the everything we've been talking about, and especially now with the head of operations and stuff, I'm also getting. I know I keep referencing other things, but I feel like that's helping at least me when I say it out loud. It helps me pick a direction to go in. Is that I'm getting a weird mixture now of Beauty and the Beast, sort of. So Belle and the Beast mixed together, and then keeping like the heart in the jar is like the rose in the jar, like don't go into the West Wing sort of thing. And this head of operations is a lot like this castle of things that are alive, you know, like each one is its own like little thing. So it's like you stumble into this place and you find like this little head on mechanical spider legs, and it, like Lumiere, it's like, oh yes, please just come this way, and then you just lead you into a dark place where it's like, what are you doing here? This is my, you know, it's like there's something oddly, I don't want to say glampire gothic, but something bigger behind it.
I really dig that idea. Like, I really dig that idea of this Beauty and the Beast parallel.
It's a good parallel to have, but it does, however, make me feel that maybe we do need to pick. Whereas I've been trying to work with the head of operations as a disgusting meat prop. That the action figure feature of having the henchman that is even more swappable than Queen Lich is in some ways. That is like henchman number one. It does need, if it is going to be a henchman, like I can see her having lots of grunts, but if we want to have a special grunt, then that special grunt needs to be somewhat disposable, cannot be like her something as important as like the processor for all of her experiments, and does need to have something of a personality. So if, say, for example, it was the like built from the matter that used to be someone she worked with who was going to rat her out, you know, what if it was let's say a colleague who was infatuated with her, who she never really respected and never gave the time of day, but kind of doted on her, and then like is like, no, I'm gonna have to tell what you're doing. This is not okay. And she's like, oh, you know, like we can't have that, and you know, crashed his fucking skull in. So then she's able to like basically lobotomize this person, and what you're left with is this hench person that fawns over her. Is like this really creepy.
You guys,
butler.
You don't even know how bad you need to see Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah,
I can't even can't even tell you. Like it, like I kind of want to watch it now. Like, turn the stream off. We're gonna stream the movie instead, because there's so much of this stuff that we've been talking about all throughout that is in that film.
Sounds like Man Who Fell to Earth was the definitive like style film.
100%, dude. I'm telling you.
And this is Queen Lich's. This is Queen Lich's film.
Man Who Fell to Earth is to Glampire as Sunset Boulevard is to Queen Lich, for sure.
Interesting. So so based on that, thoughts on that direction for head of operations?
No, I'm down with that entirely.
Yeah, to make it a guy, the unrequited love, where, you know, maybe he kind of, if you were to ever get his actual opinion, it's like, how could you let her do this to you? It's like, well, at least now she speaks to me. You know, it's like, at least now I'm useful to her now. Like, it's creepy and sad, and damn you, Glampire. It's really like all it comes down to. Like, one more life ruined. You ruined this woman's life. Wasn't really all that normal to begin with, but this poor guy was just trying to be a good scientist, and the heartbreak. And the DNA break, everything that came with it.
It's going to be good.
Cool. Okay, that's exciting.
And I think the like bringing up things like Beauty and the Beast, bringing up things like Mr. Freeze, I'm realizing that there's a duality nature to her, to Queen Lich. Like, if we can sort of, if you could describe each villain and what they represent with one thing, like boil them down to the basics, I'm sensing now that Queen Lich is about the duality.
Yeah, and it's what she was versus what she's become.
I mean, it's all these things. It's Beauty and the Beast. It's Jekyll and Hyde. It's Two-Face. You know, it's the fight between the brain and the heart.
Quite literally.
You know, literally. And you know, what does it mean to be a human being when she's, you know, trying to achieve perfection, but yet you lose your humanity when you're trying to achieve perfection? So I don't know. That unintentionally says a lot of really cool and interesting things.
So I've felt that about her from when I was when we were first talking about her. I have always gotten that feel from her, and I latched onto that part of the character.
And it might be because she's the first villain that is a human. I mean, Glampire, at the end of the day, he's not human, and he is just evil. Queen Lich, much like people, is not really evil, but she's not good, and she's trying to figure out who she is. And trying to build who she is, really. Like, I mean, that's kind of what people are doing. But I think that's kind of why we all were kind of drawn to this character, is that, one, it's a human being, and two, there's just all this potential when you have, like, limitless potential with what you can do with her.
Yeah, and the fact that she's the only human that the lightning dogs will ever come close to meeting for such a long time, it makes it all the more appropriate that it's something like her, where they have to come face to face with she's a worst case scenario, but when you boil her down to her core, like, she is the actual, like, failing of humanity, of going too far in one direction, of having that conflict, like that it face to face of, like, man is not God, and when man tries to play God, terrible things happen.
I like everything that we got here. But I think the favorite thing that was drawn tonight, Tony, was just the head of the first of the first figure that you drew, because I think that for me, at least personally, that's what pushed everything into that direction. So great work all around.
Well, thank you, and I will retweak head of operations a little bit. I like that profile in terms of just him literally sitting on. I almost picture him like a spark plug with legs.
Mm-hmm.
So that he can just sock it in.
Yeah.
But I'll tweak the design of the face a little bit so that we can see, because I picture him as an early experiment to what Queen Lich would become, and the fact that we've tied him into being this former unrequited, or this former colleague of hers with unrequited affection toward the Queen,
mm-hmm.
is it fits in with it, complements everything that I was kind of picturing for him anyway.
Well, imagine him as looking like what Queen Lich should look like. Like, she's put no cosmetic effort into this fellow whatsoever.
Correct.
Yeah, and I figured that's why I had originally given him, like, the stitches, and I'll make him look a little bit more patchwork.
Well, I think less patchwork. I think more meat mess, more like those like the creatures from Big Trouble in Little China, more like the meat computers from Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell.
Like when she reveals that this guy used to be human and he used to like her, the lightning dogs would just sort of shoot it a look and be like, that thing was human? Like, what? Like, the last thing you would expect to be human is human.
I'll tweak it a little bit. The thing that I want to avoid is getting too far off of the style we've got working, because a lot of this is very it is very clean. It is something that lends itself well to animation, and meat mass doesn't necessarily translate to the type of show.
Good point. Yeah.
that we've been pushing. So with that, I'll see if I can find a happy medium between the two. And I think there's a couple of ways that I can go with it. That's why I was going more the
Jonah Hex from Batman the Animated Series.
Done. Easy enough. So, like, skin grafts. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, less like a Dracula mummy head.
Less like Frankenstein, more Jonah Hex. Burn victim is what we're going for.
Yes. Kind of.
Which to be fair, he was, because when he professed affection, he got burned.
Mega burn.
And on that note.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Lightning Dogs. Remember, you can watch these doodles happen at some link that we'll be linking to. Thank you so much for listening. Bye. I am Cap.
Bye. I'm Doug.
And I'm Prospector Tony.
Oh!
Hashtag Illinois.